Welcome to Skin and Soul. I'm Gwenm Carsley, a transformational body, sex, and soul coach, and I'm inviting you on a bold, unfiltered journey into the heart of our humanity through the lens of Eros. This is where we strip away the shame, dive into the unspoken, and embrace the wild, raw truth of our desires. Together, we'll crack open the taboo, uncover our deepest intimacies, and awaken the pulse of our sexual essence. Because real transformation, it's messy, it's thrilling, and it's oh so delicious. Buckle up, loves. Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hi there, I'm Gwenm. I'm your host of Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale, and I have with me today Dame Clarissa Burt, who is an extraordinary woman who's had an extraordinary life that began with a lot of hardship and moved into glam, became one of the top 10 runway models in the 80s, has produced and has been a champion of women, and is also the author of The Self-Esteem Regime, which we will get to today. But I wanted to go into a little bit more of an intimate conversation to start, because one of the things that we had started to talk about, and you're a woman of, I'm going to say deep self-esteem, deep self-worth, but it didn't always begin that way. So first of all, welcome. Just want to welcome you here.
Thanks so much.
And when we were talking, you had come from an Irish Catholic background, and so really taught to bury things, I'm going to say.
Yes.
And so I wanted to start with silence. Because I think so many women are brought up with silence and just the inability to express themselves. And I wanted to know how silence has played a role in your life.
Well, silence for me in the beginning was children would be seen and not heard. That was one of the things that, and I was a really gregarious kid with a lot of energy. And so I was quick to learn. I was real, sort of dependable and reliable. I was one of those kind of kids that, you could count on. And then I became Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play when I was 5. So I think from there, once I got my first standing ovation after supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, I knew that, there was so much more that I needed to be doing, and it wasn't too silent. So I had a pretty early reckoning, if you will, with silence, in the sense that back then it was something that I had to give myself permission to break out of. There's mores of children to be seen and not heard. Whereas now there are the moments that I think I cherish the most.
In terms of, so
in terms of finding moments of silence, finding moments of meditation, finding moments of, if you come to my home, you'll see that it's quite Zen-like. So we've got the essential oils going, and we've got the lounge chill music in the background, or I will in the morning, I'll open up YouTube and go to one of the, the Hertz, Hertz, 568 or whatever it comes up, 920 something. I forget all the ones, but these are all of the I don't know, the waves, I don't know, theta, beta, I don't know exactly, but I open those up just to have that as an underlying for the workday. And in a subconscious way, that also helps to placate, if you will, any of the stress or any of the difficulties you might be going through in the moment. So I try to keep deposits of that on hand, just keep and making sure that, I'm kind of always ahead of the game when at all possible.
Okay, when it comes to silence in terms of, so you were silenced as a child and kind of, and buried, I mean, from what I understood quite a bit, and moved into a very glamorous world, had gotten married at some point that dismantled, or like, no?
Never got married.
Oh, I don't know why I thought, okay.
That's okay. No, I mean, I've had plenty of boyfriends, thousands. No, I mean, I've had, my relationships that were lovely. And this is while I was in Italy, by the way, because I lived there for 30 years. So, but, they were great for the time that they were meant to be great. And then it wasn't so great. And then, but it was never really any of those relationships were the relationships. And I talk about 3 over the 30 years that I was there, that were people, I think, that what they say about love, right? It's a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And none of mine up to date have been for a lifetime. But there was a reason, and there was definitely a season.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more around when you say that there's a reason, a season, a lifetime, but what do you think you learned in your life, in your early life, around intimacy and love? And how that shaped?
Oh, wow. Okay. Love was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So there were moments when my father was beating the crap out of everybody in the house. And then there were moments when my father was laying in my mother's lap and she was combing his hair and, all kinds of love. So he used to beat the crap out of her. And then, it was all choo choo choo, choopy 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 choo. So that
Yeah.
was really hard for me to figure out at the beginning. That was very difficult actually, because it was very, again, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde-ish.
Mhm.
So it was kind of like watching a tennis match, if you will. So that was probably, yeah, that was the most difficult thing I think to learn how to navigate as a young child. I was the one that was instrumental, but then, after that, when I was 18, to get my mother and sister out of the house, because the violence continued and the abuse continued. And so as I was 18 and turning an adult, I was able to hopefully make I really hopefully at the time could make the executive decision to get my mom, up and out of the house. And my sister, we couldn't leave her. She was only 13, and that's what we did. So it was Sunday, August 14th in 1977, about 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. We got in the car. Mom put it in, I said, put it in neutral. I pushed her out of the garage because we didn't want him to hear the car start. I pushed her out of the driveway, and she started the car out in the street, and off we went. We never went back.
And then how do you think that influenced your relationships thereafter?
Well, it was really, again, both of them had the Irish Catholic upbringing. My father, 12 years to the priest, my mother, 12 years to the nuns, and a very strict Irish Catholic father who was one of 16 children. So you can imagine how Irish that gets, right? So it was very
Mhm.
severe, very strict. And so there was a lot of fear around all of that too, right? There was a lot of, um, in fact, when I was 14, 15 years old, I was having gastritis attacks or colitis attacks. And
Mhm.
I remember few times having to go to the hospital, and they were saying, she's having, gastric issues, like because my stomach was always in a huge knot. The oldest of three, had to keep them at bay, my parents, and then make sure the kids were okay because they had two more. And so it was, it was a tough go there for a while. But again, all these kind of, let's call them hardships, right? Because certainly there are worse things in the world. Mine weren't the most fortunate, but there are certainly worse things in the world. Um, you learn how to navigate, and once you get out of the natal home, you learn. I left the house thinking if I just kept yelling and screaming, everything was going to fall in line, and
Mhm.
people would look at me like I had three heads. Like, what the hell is going on with you? And I learned, well, that didn't work. So you get out of the house, you leave everything that didn't serve you. You learn, kind of let that all go, and then move forward with kind of a new you. You reparent yourself. You put on some big girl britches, you affront life, which I
Mhm.
did in another country altogether for 30 years, learning another language and building my business there. Um, and that was again after my parents had already separated, I left. But and it was a place that put me into a lot of responsibility for my age.
Yeah. So how old were you when you went to Italy? I'm just thinking that it's such a stark
Yes,
difference from where you were
contrast.
coming from, right?
Right.
Such a contrast culturally.
So from New Jersey, where I graduated high school, I went in to live in New York City for about 2, 3 years. And that would have taken me up to, what did I say, 1970, 1980. I was still where 81 is when I went to Italy, 81. And, I had already been with Wilhelmina in the city. So, I was picked up as a model. But it was the Kim Alexis era. And it's so funny because she lives here in Scottsdale now. Do you remember Kim Alexis, the beautiful blonde that, mini skirts and bouncing on the beach and lots of
Yeah.
smiles? Well, I wasn't just skipping on the beach blonde and, lots of smiles. I was really a little more sophisticated. So Europe was calling for me.
Mhm.
And I was glad that it did because yeah, at the time of my life, modeling, which then parlayed into on-camera talent, and then that parlayed into my producing my own television shows. But um, it was um, it was a very interesting time, obviously, to learn all about yourself when you're halfway around the world with no internet, no cell phones, no email, none of the things. So, you're going to make the mistakes. Now, when I really started modeling, I was about 23, 22, 23. I started in Paris, but I didn't stay there long. Well, I wasn't a Paris kind of gal. It's lovely, but it just wasn't for me. I really fell in love with Italy. And so I stayed there for the full 30 years.
Yeah, there's something about Italy where I find there's just like this beautiful sensuality just in the culture and the country that teaches you how to appreciate living. And
Yeah.
so, and I bring this in because I know that your book is all about living well, like coming back into yourself
Mhm.
and creating the life that you want to live. So
Yes.
building up the self-esteem to do that. And I think, I mean, just from your demeanor, right? Just being gutsy, just being able to like haul your mother out. First of all, I don't know, too many people that can haul
Well, you don't know
successfully,
my mother, Gwen.
right? Yeah, right.
You don't
Well,
know
that was
my
the other thing
mother.
is like, did she even
That
want
was
to leave?
probably my
Right,
crowning moment in life was,
right.
getting her to look at me. And I said, this is these are exact words. I looked at her and I said, he's waiting to kill you. He's waiting for me to go to college because I was going to be going to, it was August, I told you, right? I was leaving in about 3 weeks to go to college. I said, he's waiting for me to leave for college to kill you. And when my mother looked at me and said, yes, I know, oh, that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she did agree to go. Well, that's good. Yeah. Because many women decide to stay back home. And that's probably, so I'm curious to know whether your sister is anything like you in terms of like you just have this life force within you that says, I'm going to go and get what I want, even
Yeah,
if I'm going to make the mistakes.
yeah, my sister is 6.5 years my junior, and she is full of, she's more social. I'm a little bit more to myself.
Mm.
She's the phone rings. If the phone rang in the house, it was always for her. It was never for me. Let's just put it that way. But it's always been that way in my life. I've always been a loner, but not lonely. And I think that's another really poignant thing to
Mhm.
be able to learn about yourself and give yourself and at the end of the day, it's okay. Because I used to think that, since I wasn't super social and I didn't love a million people around me all the time, there must have been something wrong with me. There's a great book when it's called Aspergirls,
Asper. Okay.
Aspergirls by Rudy Simone. And
Okay.
I had found her on YouTube and I started following her a little bit. I went, oh my God, I'm going to get her book. Well, she's got this checklist, right, of things that, you could probably be on the spectrum-ish with, to look at somebody and talk to them. I don't think I look or sound potentially like I might be on the spectrum, but I checked every damn box. I read something, yep, that's
Mhm.
me. Yep, that's me. Yep, check, check, check. So, it was interesting when I was writing my book, The Self-Esteem Regime, I did a lot of, alternative, if you will, or side research because self-esteem is so broad and so deep. And it's not
Mhm.
about don't compare yourself to anybody else. Yeah, that's part of it, but that's not really it. And so getting her book in hand was really eye-opening because what happened was I was allowed to give myself then grace and permission, but more grace because people used to look at me and point at me and tell me how difficult I was. You're so difficult. I'm just wired this way. The other book is a book called, and I always get this, Dr. Elaine Aron, and the book is called, oh my God, why do I always forget this name of this book? Dr. Elaine Aron is a PhD, and there's also documentary, I think, on Netflix with her work being done, and it's called Extra Sensitive People, or as
That's
Extra
what you're
Sensitive
talking
People.
about, HSP or highly
Yes,
sensitive people, right?
yes,
Yeah. Yeah,
highly
which
sensitive
I mean,
people. Yeah.
which I can
And
relate to.
basically what that means is you're highly sensitive. Like your five senses really, although my sixth sense is pretty wild too. Just can't stand all of the commotion and all of the overload. So you can't cook in my house. I can't stand the smells. The
Mm.
lights, if it's funny because I'm kind of what you would call a stage person. And so I've lived a lot of my life on stage and under bright lights, but I can't do a lot of bright light, can't do a lot of sunlight. So that's another one. The smells, the ears. I told you about the eyes, like all the senses from me. My skin is very delicate. My hair. Oh my God, when I was modeling, and the guys used to do my hair. I mean, they used to have to come in really with fine tooth comb and just be like, because I'm that sensitive to the
So
senses.
then, so then I would be curious around like your like when I say pleasure routine of just being able to be would be in quietness, things
Yes.
that are very soft, the things that are
Yes.
very yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, yes. Let's say yes, to a certain point. I mean, obviously, in intimacy, I'm not like Little Miss Muffet on a Tuffet, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm very sensitive in that way. So that's all. I mean, I live just fine. I mean, all is well. But just to give you an idea of just reading these two books and getting more information about what I really thought were character flaws turned out to be almost scientifically proven. And I'm not the only one. The extra sensitive people, I think it's people or persons, I can't remember. Um, it's 30% of the world has this.
Yeah, to some degree or another. Like I think
Yeah,
about in our family, we've got several definitely on the spectrum, right? It seems to
yeah,
be a running theme within our family. And so I know for myself, there are certain sounds that really grate under my skin, or
right,
if I'm the stimulation is too much, that
right.
my solar plexus area will get engaged. And so that speaks a lot to, I mean, when I hear you talk about being in quiet and silence, which is interesting because your personality is very strong. It's very like it shines, it beams, and you're I would never say that you are an introvert, let's say, when you say, oh, your sister shines. That the phone call
Yeah,
was always for her, which, and I can
yeah.
see, yeah,
I don't know why that is. I couldn't explain that to you, I don't think. It's not because I prefer my own company to others. I just prefer my own company to others. I don't know how to
yeah,
explain it. I mean, I love other people and if I go to a party, I'm all over the room. Talk with everyone. Exchange business cards or networking events. I mean, I'm not the one sitting in a corner, as a wallflower. So I am all over the place in that way. But when I come home, again, the phone doesn't ring. I'm sitting in my own
yeah.
complete side. I'm back in my oasis, safe space, I guess.
So then, okay, so what I wanted to ask you about was identity, right? Because you've like you have talked about being able to recreate your identity over and over again. So what does that look like for you?
Well, it just means, okay, so coming out of high school, what do I want? What do I really want to do? I mean, I graduated just fine. I graduated 6 months early. All the grades were there, but I really wanted to be a model, but I could never. I really
Mm,
wanted to be a model, but oh, I could never. And so for me, the highlight of our lives back in the day was mom didn't get magazines. She didn't get fashion magazines, but the Sears catalog came twice a year. And damn, I'm telling you, I ripped through that thing so fast because I wanted to get to the women's section and I wanted to see how they were dressed and how they were made up and what their hair looked like. And it wasn't that many pages, but it was all I could get at the time. And I just absolutely, knew what I wanted pretty early on, but I didn't think I could, therefore, we go back to the self-esteem piece. It was a rough go in my house. It wasn't easy there. My mother had very little self-esteem, but, again, she grew up as Irish Catholic with the nuns and boys, you don't, all of that. Well, my
mhm.
mother got pregnant 2 months out of high school and she was the oldest girl and my grandfather was one of 16. So from having to have a baby to becoming immediately the black sheep of the family, which could not have, I mean, her self-esteem at 18 years old was massacred. Now, I will tell you that my mother was also, she graduated salutarian out of 800 girls in her high school, and she was on the dean's list all 4 years. So an extremely intelligent woman,
Yeah,
right?
and
So,
oftentimes
yes.
she's not rewarded because she was expected to stay in the home. So
There you are. There you
yeah,
go. So mom now, then the baby comes along and the baby and her mother fawn fainted all over me and so from a human point of view, a human being point of view, that's gonna have had to be really hard for her.
mhm,
I think that the work that I have done and been able to do and continue to do is that, my mother is difficult at times. She's really difficult to understand. And I have to always remember that I had a phenomenal life. If the angels took me tonight, I could only say thank you because my life has been ups and downs, but I've really had a good time. I've done what I wanted to do, and I'll get back to what we were talking about before. My mom didn't get that. She didn't get that chance. And she married a man that was extremely violent. Now, she didn't know they're kids at the time, but it happened pretty quickly, the pregnancy. There were really no abortions at the time. I mean, if that was the way they wanted to go, but there you go. So I have more empathy for my
mm,
mother. And I have to always remember that I think everyone always has to remember that we're always talking or speaking or communicating with someone else's inner child.
Mhm.
And this is, I think, another one of the reasons why we just have to be nicer and kinder and more understanding and let some things go. I learned very late in life, I think, that it's not always important to be right.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson. I
Yeah.
love that you brought it up, that we talk to each other's, that we're constantly talking to each other's inner children, because I think most people don't realize that every reaction is coming because we're hitting somebody else's wound, that it has nothing to do with whatever it
You.
is that we
Yeah.
said. I
Right.
mean, bar malintent and so on, but that we're always like, whatever reaction is happening on the other side is the wound that we're hitting.
Yep.
But do you think that that's why today you haven't like entered into the relationships, like you said, is it reason, a season, a lifetime? Do you think that stopped you from stepping into that,
The inner child piece.
yeah, that fear
Okay.
child piece?
That's a great question. And somebody had told me once my picker is broken. Well, okay, that could be. I don't know. But I have and I don't mean this honestly. I'll give you the best answer I can give you. And it doesn't mean better or worse. Doesn't
No.
mean I have found that my work has brought me so to an advanced place of emotional intelligence
Mhm.
that is very difficult to find in other people. Or maybe I'm just going out with, with the wrong guy. But most people don't, they can't relate to that level. And so I have to work more on, I guess, the energetic vibration to find that the same energetic vibration. And I was heartbroken 4 years ago over someone. And so I haven't really taken them. Then my mother was in a bad car accident and I'm, kind of taking care of her. She's two miles down the road. So I really haven't worked on that part of me as much. I really wanted to just back off of the what I call the famous 3 years, which is from 2000, they ended 21 to like 20, the beginning of 24, where if it was going to happen, it happened. It was a very difficult time. My brother died. My sister estranged herself from the family. She was my best friend. I broke it off with the guy, my mastermind. I had to close my business for a while. It was really, a tough, tough time. I had an 8-pound tumor removed from my right ovary. So, you know, had that happen. And so that, they're just things, things and things and things and things that life. And
And
so,
it's an invitation open. I'm going to quote you back because I know that it's like, there's also opening to possibility, and it's like, what do you want? And I think one of my questions to you is, what is it that you still want that you don't necessarily allow yourself yet to have?
um, let me think. So, it's always been my lifelong dream to take the self-esteem regime, and now I'm writing a book called Living an Esteemed Life, and to take that into retreats and women's events. And I'm not a kid anymore. I'm coming up on 67, and I know that might not sound like it's very old to some, but I started working when I was 10. I'm not kidding. I started working when I was 10, and I don't think I've ever had a day off. But with that having been said, I'm kind of enjoying the semi-retirement. I don't want to kill myself anymore. I did all that. 3-hour live broadcasts and primetime television. I was only 40 then. That'll do it. I mean, just with 200, from the press and 200 girls on stage and 18 different cameras. And, I went through a lot of all the things I really wanted to do. If you say, what do I really want to do? I would do some smaller retreats. I don't live that far from Sedona, so I kind of always thought that would be a great thing to do. And then, yes, of course, I would absolutely adore to have, a love of my life. I had an interview today with a woman that wrote something about, oh, the frogs I've kissed along the way looking for my prince, or something along those lines. And she was an elderly lady, but she was, talking about the difficulties. She says it's from the dating pool. I said, honey, that's not a dating pool. It's a dating puddle.
Yeah, there's a bit of a
What are
dating
you
puddle,
talking about, a
especially out
pool?
there.
There's no pool here. It's a puddle. Anyway, it's all right. I haven't tried really. To the answer is I haven't tried. But, I'm constantly just working and doing and I'm busy,
Have an
so that's good.
extraordinary discipline. So something, and again, like, it's brought up, and one of the tones in the book is that there's an incredible amount of discipline to raise your self-esteem, to live the life that you want to live.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what happens when the discipline relaxes. So like the opposite, right? I mean, I definitely, when I had read the chapter called Repeat, I was like, oh yeah, that's this one, right? I'm like, yeah, I could use a bit of that, of just more
Yes.
scheduling. But I always find it interesting then to see the opposite, right? That those people that are extraordinarily disciplined have it scheduled, have it going on. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
where is the moment to breathe? And that's why, looking at you around silence, and you're like, oh, I just need to breathe, but also the
Yeah.
invitation to come in,
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
bring.
really am enjoying the science. I think what I'm trying to get to is that I think right now in my life I'm in either a pause or a semi-retirement. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know if I'm just gonna wake up one day and go, "Yep, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna start pulling those retreats together." But I'm I'm happy for it. I'm happy for the time to. I go to bed at 7:30. 8 o'clock. I'm up at 4. I love living those it's really so beautifully quiet at that time.
Mm.
I'm almost like, oh, darn, here comes the sun. Well, I mean, we live in Phoenix, so we have sun all the time, but um, it's I'm just in I'm in a really, really good place. And I feel that I've done pretty much everything that I ever wanted to do. I don't, as we say, I don't need a man to feel complete. It would be lovely to have a
Mhm.
companion. But outside of that, I've got to say, I'm pretty good. I love the silences, and then I love moments like this where I'm having a lovely conversation with someone I basically just met.
And I mean, I can relate because I spend a lot of time alone. I do a lot of traveling. We talked, I'm very nomadic, and
Mm.
I'm very well aware where I'm sitting as well in my life, where I'm like, I absolutely want my companion in life. Like I've always been a hopeless romantic, I think, if you look at it that way. But I think what's for me, what does come up is not so much loneliness, because I know how to feed myself. Like I like my own company, and I'm very acutely aware of aloneness. Do you ever get that?
Acutely aware of aloneness. Hmm. Well, like I said, I am a loner, but I'm not lonely. But aloneness. Um, maybe, I don't know, maybe around the holidays, maybe
Mm,
Christmas, maybe Valentine's Day, birthday. I don't know. I don't really think about it that much anymore. It's really strange, but I don't think about it anymore. I did up until some time ago. Look at everybody else, they've got somebody for, these holidays, and now it's a holiday. Now it's basically I am taking care of the family dinner. My mother's 85, 86. She's got really bad COPD, so she can't do it anymore. So I go down and do it for her. So it's kind of like my heart is always full and my soul always feels really, really happy when I'm doing for others. It's just one of those kind of things. Give the caretaker syndrome, if you will. Maybe that's what I'll call my new book. But just taking care of somebody and feeling productive in someone else's life and making their lives easier. And one of the things that was really paramount for me all along was I just couldn't stand to see anybody suffer. I watched my mother suffer. I watched the kid, or, my siblings suffer. I suffered, and I came out of that just saying, okay, this is my life's mission. Can't stand to see anyone suffer. And early on in school, high school, I was always the go-to girl. I was the one that if you had, I was kind of like everybody's mother, aunt, elder, whatever. I was the one that, that a lot of people came to just have a chat with me so I could, let's say, build them up. I mean, as much as I could back in the time. The only thing I had back in the day when I was the bookstores, Barnes and Noble, Borders, Walden Books, and there was a little section in the back called self-help. And there might have been 40 or 50 books on those shelves, but they were enough to keep me afloat because we didn't have any other way of learning at the time. Again, no computers, no internet. So that's where I started. And it's just, if you don't mind my saying, it's just such a beautiful thing and such a full circle moment to now
mhm.
see my book. on the shelves in Barnes and Noble.
Hmm.
I mean, that,
Yeah.
thank you, universe, thank you, God, thank whatever, But the idea that, the book was picked up by a New York City publisher and then boom, right into Barnes and Noble, it was like my head was on a swivel. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
Well, and it's such a well-written book. I mean, one thing I liked about what I like about it is that it's very concise,
Mhm.
right? It's very easy and digestible to follow
Yeah.
in terms of like in just going incrementally. Um, I think where I wonder is just like, being able to sit and you say it like get a mentor, get a coach, being able to sit with yourself. Because I think most of the time, most people don't realize that what's really in our way is the capacity to sit in the body where it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yep.
Uh, Especially as somebody who's like, in the repeat, right? Repeat place. I'm not sure it was repeat. There was a couple of places, but
It's
I
okay. You're
suppose
doing
I
just
recognize
fine.
myself. Yeah. But what I do recognize also is, when you were saying about your, that you like to take care of people and just wondering, what it feels like for you, like if sitting in grief of just letting people make their mistakes. And I ask that because
Hmm.
like right now I'm dealing with my mom, right, and I'm just letting her go in dementia, and I'm watching her with a completely unlived life. She has in so many ways, and she had done things in her life that she keeps referring back to, but there's so much of her life that she has regret and just did not make the decisions, right? Didn't say, I'm going to go here or here and kind of let life take her. And I'm just wondering for you if you notice like the savior, like to save others is there.
I think I think first of all it's innate. I know that it was born into me. Because I love doing it. I really love it's it was kind of like, when my sister was born 6 and some years younger than I was. Nobody could touch her, nobody could near her. She was mine, and I changed her diapers and I gave her the bottle. And yeah, I was 6 years old, 6.5 years old,
Mhm.
7 years old. It was the idea of taking care of her, that nurturing piece that was so beautiful that I found with her that maybe I wasn't getting elsewhere. My father was not an affectionate man, and he was violent. And my mother was just trying to keep it all afloat, I think. And mom, again, very severe, very severe. She did have her moments of, softness, but it was just it was a difficult place, as I've said before. And so the idea, I think, is it was a sense also of purpose. And I
Mhm.
think it was a sense of importance, because I would get commended for it. I would get commended for, being so smart and being so quick to learn and being, my brother was the complete opposite. He came 16 months later and he was the complete opposite. So, look at what a good little mother Chrissy is, and I'll listen to Chrissy sing, and it was just different. Um, and so I loved the accolades. I don't think I craved the accolades, but I did love the accolades because I wasn't looking for anybody to give me, hey, high five, you did a great job. In fact, what a good job. We didn't hear that when I was a kid. That came out of I don't know
Yeah.
where. Good job.
But there is something about receiving it, which I'm realizing as well. Like to be able to sit in the reciprocal of hearing, like when you say, "Oh, you look beautiful," or "Oh, yes, you did a great
Sure.
job," or, right? To be able
No
to let it
doubt.
land,
No doubt.
because if you haven't been taught how to let it land, it's one thing to constantly be giving, which again, women tend to be in the affliction of constantly giving and outsourcing themselves rather than being able to claim what they want
Yeah.
and what their true voice wants, and
Well,
to be able to take it.
that's why my 12th chapter is reciprocity,
Mhm.
because it was the hardest for me to learn. I think I was in a meeting once with, my staff back in the day, and I said to them, something along the lines of, damn it, I forget what the context was, but the sense of it was, I have to do everything. If I don't do it, it's not getting done or it's not getting done right. And I probably was a nasty thing to say, but I was probably pretty pissed off too. And somebody looked at me and said, Clarissa, it's so hard to do anything for you because you do it all.
Mhm.
Wow, is that a learning moment?
Yeah,
And I went,
allowing others to do it, to pick up the pieces, and also giving the grace of it not being done, quote
yes,
unquote, right or the
right,
same way.
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
that's a little bit harder for me to let go of, but I'm
Yeah.
working on it. It was, but you get, the gist of the whole thing was, oh, that was, okay. I went, okay. Now I have to back off of that, get back off of the control. Remember, I had to control my childhood. I had to control my parents. I had to control the two younger ones. Everything was controlling and navigating and, trying to keep everything separate and peaceful and happy. And, it wasn't always easy. So that was probably one of the last things I learned to let go of was to, not everything is under my control.
Yeah, how does it feel to let go of control?
Great.
Yeah.
Now, I will say there's fewer people in my life now. There are fewer people in my life. Back in the day, I had a secretary, an assistant, 900 producers, all it was a lot of movement going on back then. But I love the 60s, my 60s, 50s too. It's a time of relaxing and letting go and applying the lessons that you've learned and just living in peace again with essential oils diffusing and chill music in the background and making your own if I want to go out, I go out. If I don't want to go out, I don't go out, kind of decisions. I like the idea of not having to depend on anyone else's schedule, on anyone else's moods, on it. That's why I think it's just such a beautiful and peaceful time, and that I am now able to live in more silence, which I adore.
And do you think there's anything that you still fear?
Um, I still fear. I think it's a trust factor because obviously there was none with my father, so I think I've been trying to rectify that my entire life. And I've had some lovely relationships that have lasted years and all the things. But at the end of the day, again, they were the right man for the right moment. They were not for a lifetime, again, as I said before. Um, and funnily enough, three of them are dead. Three of them are dead.
Yeah.
They've passed on. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is, but I would be widowed today and not have the companion anyway. So that would have been an extremely painful place for me to be too. So you just take life as it comes. You take it, because again, life will life. And when I talk about the self-esteem regime, I talk about having the tools in the shed on any given day that you're going to need when life triggers. And here comes the hurricane, and here comes the storm, and
We do lose people. I mean, I think this
yeah,
whole idea anyway around like a lifetime love. Yes, some people make it to,
yeah,
they're 95 and pass away, within a week of each other, which is quite rare because
yes,
usually we lose our partners early, one person tends to go. And so I do think there's something beautiful though about like finding love, however you find it in life and experiencing that, which then brings me to like this sense of identity, because I know the book really talks around like you can reinvent yourself over and over again, that you get to create the identity. And one of my questions is, that fine line between creating an identity and creating another false identity. And so I think there's like, there's like the sense of masks, right? Like I think most people don't realize that they're already carrying masks. And so getting rid of masks and then being able to create yourself the way you want from an authentic place.
yeah. I think it's for me at least. It's always been more as opposed to it was a reinvent for sure. Um, but it was because what I was doing in the moment was no longer giving me joy. I modeled for a long time. At a certain point, you go, okay, I'm getting a little older now. I'd like to be able to, I got stuff I can say. Give me a microphone. Moved toward acting. I did that, for I don't know how many 13, 14 films in Italy, right? Did that. Then it was like, okay, I really like this. I loved live television. So I moved into live television. Then that some years later started to get a little itchy and scratchy. And I went, God, the one thing I haven't done yet, I want to produce moved into production. I learned along the way when there's a feeling inside that you get when you're overstaying your own welcome. you know,
That's a
you
really good quality to have, to
yeah,
understand when that part of
time to
your
move
life is
on.
over and when it's time to move on.
Time
Because
to
I
move
think
on.
we get so attached to who we
Hmm.
think we are in a moment,
Yeah.
we miss the boat of when we're changing and when it's time to slough a skin to
Hmm.
to move into another, phase
And
of
that
life.
that can be a miserable place to be. Can be a
Yeah,
miserable place to stay. What you need to do is to summon the courage because it's kind of cushy and warm where I know things, and then you're going to have to maybe put up with people going, well, what are you thinking? You're just fine where you are. You're making plenty of money there. Well, what do you want to move forward for? What do you want to do something different for? You're going to get all the naysayers. So that's where I'm always underlining courage in the work. Always. It's like the number one word. It's the number one bring with. It's the number one you can't do without. It's courage.
I agree. And the whole it's the courage, and also, it's sitting there with, you know, the idea of expansion. It's again, when you say like, oh, this person's looking at two lives, the path of like staying in something comfortable or taking the risk, and probably risking everything. But I'm always amazed at how many people live a life that is so safe because they're like, this is reality. I'm like, people, you waking up as a baby was not reality. Like there's something so magical and sacred in just being born. Doesn't matter whether you're religious, non-religious, or whatever, just the spectacularness of being born into a life of experiencing and then getting lost in what you think you should be doing, how you should be behaving, all of these things of like how you think you're supposed to show up in the world. And that we're taught that at a very young age. And so many people don't walk around and question, who am I now? What do I really want? And without being frivolous or, just jumping from one thing to another without grounding in something, but being able to say, oh yeah, no, I want something else. Like I want to feel something else. I want to live something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I talk about the familial tribe and, the things that are passed forward from generation to generation. And a lot of the things that we're taught are not ours. They're not ours. So when we're finally able to leave the house, thanks mom and dad for everything. We all get a set. Everybody's got their own stories, good, bad, or indifferent. I'll speak to people say, oh, I had a beautiful childhood. I had a perfect childhood. That's great. That's great. Don't read my book because it's not for you. I'm joking, but
I think it's for anybody who doesn't have.
Of course.
I actually, I was surprised because I think, it did remind me a little bit of, and I hadn't read it in a long time, which is The Creative Habit, if you know Twyla Tharp. I did The Artist's Way, I think, when I was young, and you reminded me of that. And I used to do it religiously.
I think I still have
sitting
it.
down for just write, 10 pages solidly, don't lift the pen off, just let all the crap go. Whatever's up here,
still
get
do
rid
that?
of it.
Do you still do it?
I haven't done it now
haven't
in
either.
years, but
No,
I did it for years. I was just like, and religiously,
Yeah.
and how valuable it is to get into the habit of doing things for yourself so that you can show up in the world the way you want to show up. And that was like one of what I loved about yours is so clear, and so doable, because, for me, as somebody who's incredibly creative and can get lost in her own creativity, truly, I'm like, where's the roadmap? Where's the road? But I know when my body tells me it's time to expand. I know when there's something where I'm just like, oh, something doesn't feel right. I need to move in a direction. I think for people to start listening to that, even if the voice says, oh, hey, I just want to read that book. I'm curious. Yeah.
I think we have to, again, give ourselves permission, give ourselves grace, because yes, it is scary to move on and move forward. But dreams remain dreams until you make it a reality. And the reality is so beautiful and bold and bright. And once you finally get through all the scary stuff, and, I talk about that last mile, going that last mile. And it's the longest mile. And when you turn around and go, come on, everybody, everybody, and you're sure nobody's there. Nobody's walking that last mile with you. You left them long ago, and along the way. And so, the road is long and it's dark and it's rainy and you don't have an umbrella nor a raincoat. And it's, howling sounds out there. So, it's all the scary stuff. But there's that light at the end of that tunnel, or the light at the end of that path. Every step you take will get you closer to, and it just keeps getting bigger and bolder and brighter and more beautiful, as I said before. And then, you finally, you do it and you go, damn, that wasn't so hard after all, So we're the ones that get in our own way. I've heard that a million times. We get in our own way. So just, step aside and let you be you.
Yeah. You get more comfortable with I think the more you practice it, the more comfortable you get being out of your comfort zone. I always say I'm terrified of everything, but I do it anyway because I want to live life. You
Right.
know, I get every time I get onto an airplane, every time I'm doing an activity that makes kind of freaks me out, and I always say I have to like get angry before I go and do it, just because I don't want anything to stop me from living my best version of myself. So, do you think there's anything in your life now that you're still afraid of?
I'm afraid of, I think, I preach this, about failure and, failing is just your first attempt in learning, right?
Hmm.
And that is something to be celebrated because you know what you're not going to do the next time. Um, so I give, again, a little grace around fear. Um, I think going back to, starting up the events or the retreats, just, I fear that. Isn't it funny how you would set it up in fear that no one would come?
Hmm.
Nobody would come. And I know that's not true, but what if, so it's just what I call those daily demons. The daily
Hmm.
demons, they've got to come in every day, they got to have their say, and then you go,
Yeah,
today.
you say thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that's
heard you. You
all
can
good. That, yeah,
please.
off you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be it,
Okay.
really. I don't fear anything else. Um, I don't fear that much. I really don't. I've done so much that, that was fearful, I suppose, at a certain point, and then it became fearless. I'm fine. I mean, you just get up and do it. There's not that
So,
much
what do you think
more.
was your greatest fear originally?
Um, I think it always goes back to the same thing for lots of us, and that is not good enough. Nobody likes me.
Yeah, I don't belong. Nobody likes me.
Yeah,
Thank
nobody
you.
likes me. Because I always was a part. I was never in a clique or a group or, and again, this is the way I wired, right? It's
Hmm.
not because it's, I'm being antisocial. It's just I just can't, I had to move quicker than the group was moving. I was the
Mm.
first one on the bus. I was the first one off the bus. You know, I was the last one on the plane. I was the first one off the plane.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be in lines. I didn't want to be in the queue. I just had to get, I had, my motor was running all the time.
So, does it feel different now to slow down, or are you still running?
It feels good now to slow down. Also because I think then, it was a time of, lots of energy and lots of places to go and people to meet and maybe, I don't have those same needs anymore. So the idea now for me to be able to just relax, chill out. If you wake up at 7 or you wake up at 7:15, it's all good. I wake up
Yeah.
at 4, so quite frankly, as I said before. But yeah, I don't put the restrictions on myself that I used to. And it's funny because sleep used to be something you really weren't allowed to do very much in my house. I mean, by 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning and Sunday morning, you needed to be awake, and it wasn't always a kind awakening, because stuff had to be done around the house, and that was it. And we busted our butts around the house. Inside, my brother had the weeds outside. I had all kinds of stuff inside. There was very little in the way of a real childhood, that. And then there was always, the fact that I was, kind of in younger years, I got involved with some of the groups, like baton twirling and the drill team, and which were the guns, right? And a couple of little paradey things because they never came to see me. Never.
Mm.
And so marching down Main Street for the 4th of July parade, all proud in my, uniform and with a group of us and whatever it was, and looking for my parents because you could see other parents from the side. Oh, gee, and then, and I would look for mine, and they were never there. So I'd go home and I'd say, yeah, sheepishly, mind you, where were you guys? I didn't see you. We
Mm.
were there. You didn't see us. We were there. And my brother
Mm.
pulled me into his room and said, "That's not
There
true,
we are.
Chrissy.
No,
We
no.
weren't there."
That's one, crazy making, and two, they always say that actors, actresses are um, really crave to be seen. I think there's like, performers have that and have the magic of like
Well, I
here,
mean, you'd
you're
love to have when you're
like
8 years old, your mom and dad show up. 10 years old, your mom and
absolutely
dad show up. And then for my brother to say it's not true, Chrissy, we weren't there. And then know that on any turn of a dime, somebody in that house could be beaten for lying.
right. Yeah. So it was a brave admittance to
It
say
was
that
a
out loud.
lot to navigate. It was a lot to navigate. Like you talk about, The Exorcist, just trying to figure it out. But look, you move on. Again, big girl britches, reparent yourself. Know they did the best that they could. Thank you very much. Now it's up to me to be a better person more than I am today. To want to be, to want to strive to be a good person and
Mm.
potentially write a book that people enjoy and that can help them along their path.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful blueprint for doing that because when I listen to you, I'm like, wow, there's so many people that would fall more into the um, would fall more into, I'm going to say, the woundings, right? You were like, I just have to pick up my big girl britches. And like, I know for myself, I also kind of, I'm going to say I raised my mom. I was charged of the house. It was the thing that I needed to do. And I became much more introverted. Like that self-esteem piece
Mhm.
really struggled at a very young
Oh
age.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think that carries through. But we don't have much time, so I'm going to give you, and I think you might appreciate this, is based on Bernard Pivot's 10 Questions or James Lipton's, who made them famous during the Actor Studio. I have done one that is specifically for Skin and Soul. So I'm going to ask you, what is one truth your body has always known that your mind took years to catch up to?
That that's a really great one. That the I have a lot of trouble with my stomach.
Mm,
And that's kind of where I envision my inner child to be in that area of my body.
well,
So if
thank
I
you.
think of my inner child, I'm not thinking my throat, I'm not thinking my brain, I'm not thinking my calves. I'm thinking, my inner child is right there in that whole stomach area. And I've been taking, and this is not a lie, for 50 years, I've been taking 3 to 4 antacids a day.
Well,
I
thank
was
you.
in the hospital last Monday because I'm having trouble with my stomach, and I have a colonoscopy on the 9th. So just to give you an idea of how much difficulty is going on, physically on a daily basis, by the way, it's not a come and go kind of thing. Um, for all of those years, that, yeah, I would definitely say my inner child in my stomach region.
Mm. What do you think the most intimate moment you've ever had that had nothing to do with sex is?
Um, I think maybe when I had a private audience with Pope John Paul. I thought that was really, really, I'm not particularly religious. I'm not particularly Catholic. We were brought up Catholic. Um, when in Rome, I'll, go light some candles in the churches as a good Catholic girl does, but I'm not a good Catholic girl. But there was a peace and a knowing, if you will, in being able to look him in the eyes and have him, bless my forehead and get the picture and all the things. And then being able to bring that back to my extremely Catholic family on both sides, mother and father, because they are very, religious and they do go to mass and the things like that. So me being able to bring home that picture for everyone, I made 100 pictures and sent it to everybody, brought home rosaries and gave them to everybody. I think that was probably that. That would be a really good
Yeah,
answer, I
that's
think.
an extraordinary moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what is the one thing, if you could be remembered for one sensation that you gave someone, what would it be?
Loyalty.
Mm. And if pleasure were a language, what would your first word be?
I don't know why I went directly to chocolate chip cookies. I don't know why. So you asked me the
Yeah.
question again. You want to ask the question again? Because I
I
just
love it. Chocolate chip cookies are up there
pleasure
for me.
cookies.
Yep.
Sugaraholic was not anymore.
If your erotic life had a title like a novel or a film, what would it be called?
The girl who wouldn't but did.
The girl who wouldn't but did. Love it. What's the one thing you've never said out loud but you wish someone would ask you about?
Well, it's really simple. I mean, when we're talking about how much silence I live in and how sparse it is, as far as just a real genuine, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Just a real genuine,
Yeah.
hey, how are you? And somebody that really wants to listen.
What is one thing? Let's see. What part of your erotic self are you still afraid to bring to the light?
Hmm. Interesting. Well, I am kind of bossy. Well, I was known to be very bossy. Um, I think for me, it would be just a complete surrender and trust.
Mhm.
Complete surrender and trust, for sure. I hope you
Thank
understand what I'm trying to say, though.
I do. And surrender is big and it's right up there with reciprocal, right?
Right.
It's one of those
Yes.
things
Yeah.
we can give
Just, yeah.
and
The
surrender is a
allowing,
big one.
the
Being allowing,
allowing.
being
Yeah.
open. Yeah.
Yes.
What dies in you when you pretend and what comes alive when you don't?
Pretend. When I pretend. God, what do I pretend? Whew. What dies in me when I pretend? Well, I mean, I again, as imperfect as I am, I really do try to live in a really high integrity and honesty and honor. I don't, those aren't words I throw around. This is, the value system that is my blueprint that I come to the table with all the time. And so I pretend, pretense might have been a part of my past. I don't think it's a part of who I am now. I wouldn't know how to answer that question otherwise.
Beautiful. So finish this sentence. When I leave this life, I want my skin to remember.
Chocolate chip cookies, no kidding. Um, when I leave this life, I want my skin to remember the ocean breezes off of Ninth Avenue in Seaside Park, New Jersey.
Mm. And if the soul has a scent, what does yours smell like today?
Hmm. Neroli.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful scent.
Mm.
Orange blossoms, yes. Thank you. We have just a couple of minutes, so I'm going to ask you if there's anything that you want to share about your book, where to reach you
Yeah.
on your
Well,
website,
there's the
if there's
book
a
right there.
favorite, yes, any favorite chapters, any
Well,
parting words.
I think more than the chapters themselves, which are really great. I like the acknowledgement. So can I read that real quick? It'll only take a
Yeah.
second. Okay. If we have time. Okay. I'd like to acknowledge the millions of people who all over the world who have been abandoned, abused, beaten, hit, struck, oppressed, depressed, distressed, held back, lied to, cheated on, lost, betrayed, deceived, misled, double-crossed, walked out on, stabbed in the back, sold down the river, stolen from, deserted, discarded, shunned, cast out, dropped, dumped, forgotten, neglected, rejected, and or dejected. You are the sole reason I have written this book.
Mm,
And the cool thing about that is, the not so cool thing, but cool thing is that that's everybody. It's all of us.
yeah.
It's
It
everybody.
is. I was going to say, I don't think anybody escapes it. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's beautifully written. So thank you. I want to
Thank
thank
you.
everyone for joining today. Thank you, Clarissa, for being here. And the book again is Self-Esteem Regime. And have a fabulous week. Thank you again for being here and for joining me. And see you
Thanks so
next time.
much.